Watching this film, I am reminded of the 1987 horror movie The Stepfather.
Hodgkins, what's to get wrong?
What did you say?
Huh? Wait a minute. Who am I here?
If you suffer from dissociative identity disorder, this movie may be triggering. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. Anyways, here are my immediate thoughts on Hitman. Hitman is the newest action comedy starring Glen Powell. He also co-wrote the script with Richard Linkletter, who directed the picture himself. And Richard Linkletter is a monster talent. Films like the Before trilogy, Waking Life, Boyhood. I mean, this guy is a monster talent. Dazed and Confused. He just has a slew of great films under his belt. Hitman is sold as a true story of Gary Johnson, played by Powell, who, when not teaching psychology at the University of New Orleans, works part-time with the New Orleans police to help capture those who plan to hire contract killers. Gary's dedication to his work leads him to a woman played by Adria Arjona that he falls for. When her abusive husband turns up dead, it's a race against time for Gary to prove her innocence, while at the same time wrestling with his own identity issues as he begins to take up the traits of the hitman he pretends to be with potential dangerous consequences. So like I said, this film is a true story, and the film even gets to what parts are true and what aren't if you just stay through the end credits. But this is a movie about an ordinary person who is thrown into some extraordinary circumstances. But let's get to the performances first. Gary Johnson is the kind of role that actors kill for because they get to play dress up, they get to play a bunch of different characters, try a bunch of different accents, and just really show off their acting range. And Glen Powell is fucking awesome in this. And what's also great is that this movie seems to be giving a wink and a nod to the audience about Glen Powell. So Glen Powell is clearly the new it guy in Hollywood, but there are things that talk about, he has a very bland face. And it seems like the movie is leading into that. I don't believe that, but Hitman really leans into this, with several characters telling Gary Johnson how nondescript and invisible he really is. Gary Johnson, when this film begins, is pretty much a nerd, but as the film progresses, he becomes more bold with his undercover choices, and Powell goes ham, dressing up as Russians, rednecks, and other shady characters to capture those who plan to hire a contract killer, and it is clear Glen Powell is having the time of his life. The main persona that Gary gets wrapped up in is a hitman named Ron, and he meets up with Maddie, played by Adria Arjona, and they have insane chemistry. I really like Adria Arjona in this as Maddie. She plays pretty much the femme fatale in this film, and it works. Maddie comes off as naive, but she is definitely smarter than a lot of the other characters in this movie is giving her credit for. And when things heat up between her and Gary Johnson, it gets pretty lit. Let's just say Gary joins the Mile High Club without having to even board a plane. I enjoyed all the other performances as well. Retta from Parks and Rec plays Claudette, one of the undercover cops that works with Gary Johnson, and she's really good. Not laugh out loud funny, but very good in her role. Sanjay Rayo is good as Phil, another one of the undercover agents that works with Gary, but it is Austin Amelio as Jasper, the really slimy undercover cop. That is my favorite supporting performance. Jasper is a racist, misogynistic piece of shit, and he knows it. And he is willing to exploit his own immorality to exploit others. And I won't spoil it, but I didn't see how integral Jasper was going to be to this plot. But overall, it was a great slimy performance. With this being a Richard Linkletter film, This is a movie that is going to be dialogue heavy and is going to rely on the performances of his actors. Now, unless Linklater is doing something really stylish, like Waking Life or Through a Scanner Darkly, he really likes to just leave his cameras on his actors and just allow them to emote. And a lot of filmmakers aren't able to pull that off, especially when you have a movie that really is 90% dialogue and maybe 10% action. But Linklater and Glen Powell as writers, I feel, are really able to pull that off with this dialogue-heavy movie. What makes this movie work as well is the dark comedy that Linklater and Powell are willing to explore. We get montages of some of the shady characters Gary Johnson runs afoul of, and it is absolutely hilarious. Whether it is a trophy wife that is lusting for Gary after she has him murder her husband, or a teenager that wants to murder his mother. There are some absolutely insane circumstances that Gary Johnson finds himself in, and it is absolutely hilarious. And this plot knows how to escalate as well. Gary becomes so wrapped up in this persona of Ron that it begins to bleed into his real life. Over time, we see Gary gain confidence and he becomes a little bit more bolder with his actions, to the point where he makes one particular decision that does come back to bite him in the ass, and the resolution of it is very Richard Linklater. Linklater's not going to end his plot with some crazy shootout or some special effects laden third act action sequence, but he resolves his conflicts with words, subtext, and half glances. And this movie has a wild conclusion. Just stick to the end and stick through the credits. Overall, Hitman was a hella enjoyable ride. Richard Linklater and Glen Powell collaborated to create a darkly funny, just a funny film in spite of its dark subject matter. But the strong writing and performances by the main cast was outstanding, and the story was engaging enough to pull you into the world of this timid psychology professor who transformed into a whole slew of other personalities. As I mentioned, this is a role actors kill to play, and I believe Powell killed it. Sort of like if he was a hitman himself. I am very interested in Powell's creative output now. If he ever decides to continue script writing or get into directing, I am interested to see how that plays out and what type of style and point of view he would use. But Hitman, I hope, is another hit for Richard Linklater. And for me, Hitman is a super hit. Man, all this talk of killing and hits got me paranoid that someone's probably going to try to assassinate me. And people hate me that much. What did you think of Hitman? Share your thoughts, leave your comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you can get notifications as well. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.